Andrew says, after months of promoting the Giants Rhinos game with cheap tickets and only getting 6,621, well, at least Huddersfield gave in attendance, it is a disgrace. What more can be done to get people to our games? I don't know. What can Huddersfield do? Huddersfield have had a team which have contended. They've won the League Leaders' Shield. They've been to Wembley. And whatever they do, because they've got... Is this year the cheap season ticket year, or is it next year? Because they always go back to that.
I think
£10 for a season ticket.
The danger
Nothing works.
after Sunday is if you've put really cheap tickets on sale and people haven't bought them, what is your next marketing strategy? You've almost reached the end of an avenue there. I don't know the club well enough to know how they interact with their community. I don't know how active their foundation is. I don't know whether they put on enough around a game, whether they're able to, because clearly they're tenants in the stadium. So Sunday afternoon there was a fan zone. I could see that. I didn't get to see what was in it, but there's obviously an effort to put something extra on. Now, whether they would be able to play a women's game before or a reserve, they probably aren't because of the constrictions they've got. Huddersfield Town played on the Saturday, I think, didn't they? So,
yeah, they lost to.
So again, they wouldn't want overuse of the pitch. So they're limited, I think, in what they can do. But it does start with going back into your community for me. And I don't know how many junior clubs there are in and around the Huddersfield area. I don't know what sort of offer the club make to get those kids to bring their parents, but to me that's a better way of trying to do it than just offering cheap tickets.
Well, I was going to mention the 100, but I don't need to mention the 100 because we've got it staring in our faces at Lee, because Lee have done it. Lee have somehow managed with bands in the stand, and again, it's not their facility, is it? They don't own the Lee Sports Village, but they've got a stand where they can put a band in the corner or whatever.
Their relationship with the local council or the stadium operatives, that may have to be.
But they're putting money in as well.
They're trying to do something. They're trying things other than come and watch a game for a £5 or whatever the price were.
I mean, I don't know whether they have juniors playing it before or after at half time, and I think by getting a load of juniors on your pitch, you get a parent along with a free ticket, and then they might enjoy it. They might come again. There might be an incentive where they can get a cheaper ticket to the next game, and then pay, and then hopefully you might win some of those over. But it's like going back to those community clubs and engaging with your community clubs to get them involved.
That's, I think, how it starts for successful clubs. I mean, I think they gave away a couple of heritage certificates at half time, so there was an acknowledgement of. But again, without going back to a debate that we had about Warrington and Warrington not knowing their identity because are they the Wire or the Wolves, there is still an element of the Huddersfield fans that shout fart out.
I mean, that's just so outdated in my opinion.
And again, what marketing hasn't worked to get them to be Giants. So they've got the cowbell now, which is great. Whether
is it?
Well, no, but it's their identity.
It is, unfortunately.
Your identity is you've got a cowbell.
No, but
they've got some.
Do Giants wear cowbells?
No, who knows?
I know what you mean, but it's not an easy answer, is it? There's no single solution
and to be
to
honest,
it.
If there was, they would have done
exactly.
Because the answer is there aren't enough people in Huddersfield who are interested or will be interested at all. And why that is, I don't know.
They spend their salary cap to the full. And I think there was a post today because they've signed Jack Murchie, saying it's something like the 21st new signing in the last 2 years. So they're always trying to improve their squad. It's not like, with the greatest respect to Wakefield, come and watch a team that we already know might struggle to compete because we haven't spent the same as everybody else. And that's part of the DNA of Wakefield. You accept that. Huddersfield spend, it won't have been cheap to go and get Ian Watson as the coach.
They were in a Challenge Cup final last year. I mean,
so there's not a lot more they can do as a club. Maybe that is the limit of the interest in rugby league, in Happy Birthday, the birthplace of the town.
My view as well on the stadium is too big. And actually, if you have a smaller stadium like Lee, where you get 8,000 in what is maybe a 12,000 capacity stadium, that generates such a better atmosphere.
There was talk of that. Was it a couple of years ago that there was a big debate between Ken Davey and the owners of Huddersfield Town that there was some issue about needing to build a 12,000 capacity stadium in or around Lawn Hill where their juniors and reserves play, and the Giants moving out and into that stadium.
Can't see that happening.
But does a town the side of Huddersfield need two?
No,
clearly
not.
No.
So what can they do? Maybe the answer is people aren't interested, and we're looking back through history. You know, everyone uses Bradford as an example, but Bradford had that specific period of success, which is more recent than everyone else's. When was Huddersfield's period of success? The 1910s or something.
Yeah, team of all talents.
So
in and around
no one's around who remembers them. There's no relevance of them to today.
But to be fair,
you've had a reasonable number of League Leaders Shield. Did they not get? And Challenge Cup final, been to a few times.
But that didn't get people in.
No, but
cheap tickets haven't got people in. So maybe they just aren't people who care.
Their corporate was sold out on Sunday, so that as an income generator is working. They seem to sell, relatively speaking, a fair amount of replica jerseys. A lot of their fans turn up wearing the shirt. So the fans they've got are very loyal.
Yeah, it's not a knock on the people who are there, is it? It's how can they get more of them? And maybe they just don't exist. I don't know what... Because, as you say, they've been to the Challenge Cup final. They've won League Leaders Shields, and it has no effect.
I think... I just
Internationals are played there all the time.
It has to come back to children.
Yeah.
All clubs, just children either through school or through community clubs, and getting them involved at a young age, and then getting their parents piggybacking on that, and then hopefully coming back.
Kevin said that kids bring friends and family and spend money on kits.
But you have to have an offer for kids as well,
and that's why
going to a game. It's not just
it's
not
that's
enough
why
for
the fan zone is important. But was there stuff there for kids, or what? It's great to have street food and all that.
There has to be somewhere though that's accessible that's during a game as well. For me, speaking as a parent, I've got a 2-year-old, so he's too young at the moment. But when he gets to an age where he might want to go, he won't necessarily want to sit for 45 minutes and watch. I have no idea where he wants to go.
But this is important.
Where I can get a free ticket, probably.
Where are you going to
What is it about
or a cheap ticket.
Where you are going to indoctrinate him or ruin the rest of his life by giving him the wrong team to support.
I've no idea.
We're not too far away from going bit of hospitality.
Yeah.
Teddy says Huddersfield couldn't get a big crowd if they were free pints served by Margot Robbie in a Barbie outfit. Bit harsh, but true. So thanks for that, Teddy. What can you do if you've tried everything and then you're right? Cheap tickets is the last.
Cheap tickets, you should never go down that road because you're actually devaluing your product, and it's very hard then to say, "Do come and watch our team because we're a bit special." But if you're that special, why can't I get in here for a £5?
Because the ground was a sellout for England Ireland in the World Cup in 2013, which was a foregone conclusion of a game.
24,000, yeah.
So, and obviously that's not all people from Huddersfield who were there.
But again, without
well
knowing,
for the England-New Zealand test.
Without knowing the way the club operate, I'm sure they would have been clever enough to try and get the database of people that turned up at that game and see who was in at least an HD postcode or surrounding, and try and make them an offer to come to a game. I'm sure
there's an incentive as well with the football season ticket holders, whether you can do a piggyback off the existing football.
Not the way they're playing it.
Well,
Neil Warnock,
Warnock,
Warnock and Ian Watson swapping jobs for a week.
That was never going to work. Neil Warnock staying there, by the way. That's going totally off subject. But
really? On the basis of
he saved them, therefore leave. Yeah, don't stay because you've done your job. That was my view.
I'm still waiting for him to be Sheffield Wednesday.
I'm not saying it's all Neil Warnock, by the way. I don't know enough about Huddersfield Town or football for that matter. But
Colin, me and Batesy. I don't know what Huddersfield can do. Maybe they're just interested, but
that's why IMG exists, isn't it, as well, to help these clubs to
some
knowledge
people want
share.
to bin them off already because we didn't get millions of pounds more from Sky, which we were never going to get because we've been resting on our laurels for the last.
But IMG are in it for the long haul, aren't they? They're not in it for a quick buck to walk away in 2 years.
The thing is, they said, and we agreed with them, that coming out of the pandemic era and the shutdown, excuse me, we had to have change. Everybody talked about change. There needs to be change for broadcasters to be, upping their offer, for IMG to be coming in and giving them something that they can sell. And we are 2 years into IMG joining, and 3.5 years post-pandemic, nothing has changed.
Whose fault is that?
That's our fault. As a game.
Although, having said that, in terms of the timescales and when things were going to change, things were never going to change as early as this point. But I think
we haven't had a plan of what that change.
But I think the frustration from the outside looking in is that things seem to be taking much longer than they were anticipated to take, and things are taking a different route to what IMG envisaged.
Yeah.
So I think you're still too early at this stage to get an enhanced deal.
It is, but I think if you talk about there is a need for change. I mean, one of the things that Ralph Rimmer said, remember him?
He's doing a good job at the moment.
When we got the government money, was we've got this on condition of the fact that there is change. But nobody's outlined what change looks like, or how long it's going to take for change, or what the strategy for change is. And it just feels like it's the same. And then we go, oh, why isn't the broadcaster giving us any more money? Because what did we take to the table to say to the broadcaster? You know, we might say in 3 years' time we're going to have 2 conferences of 8, and we're going to, you know, the idea is to populate these areas, and this is our development plan, and this is how we'd use your money, and these are the competitions that, you know, the World Club Challenge isn't going to be, it may or may not happen every year, it's now in the calendar, and what Challenge Cup's going to go there, but it's going to look, and like we're 2.5 years down that road, and actually we have no idea what that change looks like.
To borrow the phrase from the World Cup, it was about being bold and brave.
Yes.
I haven't seen any of that. And that's not a slight by the way on IMG.
And it doesn't have to start tomorrow.
No. That's the whole game has a responsibility. Yes. If you're going to bring somebody in as a partner, you have to buy into what they are proposing.
And it's the whole game that at the moment is stopping some of that, because they're saying, "Oh, we'll
cherry pick this, and we're
not getting quite as much money." Oh, okay. Well, in that case, we won't drop loot fixtures.
There has to be an acceptance.
You know, well, but they've told you loot fixtures don't work. They can't sell your game with loot fixtures.
There has to be an acceptance within the sport that the only part of the sport that is bringing in any money is the top competition, and that is Super League. I don't know how much the BBC pay for the Challenge Cup or the international, but it's chicken feed, it's nothing. So there has to be an acceptance that if IMG, who have experience in these matters,
not experience, are global leaders,
but they don't know as much as I do running Pontefract pylons in Super League, because I'll use them as an example because they don't exist. But I am the archetypal club owner of, you know,
Magic Weekend needs to go, they say, because we need to focus more on making the Challenge Cup final an event. We still haven't heard yet whether we've got a Magic Weekend in 2024, and the likelihood is we probably still will.
What's the Challenge Cup format for next year? Because are we having groups? Are we not having groups?
Yeah,
but still nobody knows. There's no certainty. There's no, you know, set plan where you go to a broadcast and say this is what we are delivering next year for your new TV deal.
We'd like a TV deal to bridge us over to then when this really dynamic.
But 3 years is not really a bridge. It's almost too long, isn't it?
Yeah. Well, the bridge was the 2-year deal we've just come in.
Yeah,
it's long enough to come up with an idea, and then actually we'll row back week by week on this because it'll upset.
But it might also be that the people at Sky would say we can't commit to any more than 3 years because our industry is changing. But what are you actually selling us?
I don't think you would. But what my point was on the length, it's neither too short nor too long.
No, it's a bit of an indiscriminate amount of time.
If it's a 12-month deal, because it's actually we need another 12 months or another 6 months to get all the clubs on board to what we need to deliver, and then we'll come back to you in 6 months and say this is now what we are delivering. Now let's negotiate on this deal. Fair enough. But then, do you do 2 years? But then 3 years is neither one thing nor another for me.
And the other thing is, we haven't actually signed a deal. We've gone into a period of 30 days.
But is that not standard? I don't know. I'm assuming no.
I don't think.
Or if it has been, then it's never been announced. They just signed the deal and said, "Here's the deal. We've signed the deal."
You announce the deal when the deal is ready to be announced. Not we haven't actually signed a deal, but this is the kind of deal that we're going to sign, and we're going to actually talk about the deal. You know, there's a quote in League Express from Rodri Jones saying, you know, we need to do something with our league and decide what it's
what our league looks like going forward is something we need to consider. No. It's going to be more akin to a TV channel, perhaps. We can't lose sight of the reason it was created, which was a membership platform for supporters of the game, but the plan is for a lot more content on there. The irony is there's less content on there now than there was last year.
But the thing about that is you can't be deciding now what it's going to be. You need to have as part of your plan what it is and how it fits in.
Do we know what's going to be on there this week? I was going to show Saints Leeds on Sunday. The Women's Super League semi-final home decider.
I don't know.
Why wasn't Leeds Huddersfield on there on Sunday? Because they showed Leeds Rhinos the other week. And
maybe it would have detracted from the huge crowd they were expecting.
Yeah. Or,
But again, that Our League, surely that comes under the IMG umbrella.
Yeah, but
they have a plan for
I don't
it.
know why you say we need to decide what it's going to be.
No,
Surely by
agree.
now
You should know what it is.
it's going to be a digital season ticket or whatever it's going to be, and we're going to, it's going to need to cost £120 a year. How many people would sign up for it? It's like we're almost always trying to bolt the horse behind the cart, which is bizarre.
I tell you what, we're talking about the number of match officials we're going to need to populate the video referee booths next year. I'm concerned about the number of quality broadcasters, but I can say that as a non-quality broadcaster. It's okay holding Sky to ransom, but there's no one else willing to put anywhere near that sort of money in, says Kevin. And Kevin's right. And we can fool ourselves with stories like, DAZN are interested. TNT might come along. And I'm not saying they didn't say how much is your rugby league, mate, but any of those signing an exclusivity would have been a massive backstep from Sky, which is the established sports partner of everything for the last 30
years by 2026, isn't it?
Premier League football, the cricket, everything apart from rugby union. So
and Sky know that. But unless you have an offer that genuinely excites an alternative broadcaster, with Sky in a monopoly position, which is in effect they are, why would they offer more than they need to?
They've got rid of Speedway. They're happy to get rid of that. They got rid of WWE, which they had for longer than we've had a deal with them, going back to the mid-80s.
But they've taken netball, which is, to me, looks like innovative coverage. The 100, whether you like it or not, is a Sky sport. They seem to be doing all right with viewing figures, and grounds are maybe not quite as full this year, but there's certainly plenty of people there.
It's finished now, so it's all right. It's back to normal cricket now.
But I think our offer seems to be insipid. Bearing in mind this is such an important time.
What are we as a sport offering to DAZN or TNT or whoever who are not our principal partners? What do we add to them? Do we add hundreds of thousands of subscribers? Do we add a vibrant product that looks exciting?
We do have a vibrant product.
Because we know that the games are
exciting.
going.
Yes.
Look at Wembley, and we look at the whole day, and we think, well,
wasn't a great week this week.
But ultimately, it comes down to numbers because they're businesses. So it will come down to how many subscribers is he going to generate, and how much advertising revenue can we generate from that spot, and that's the crux of the decision.
And the advertising revenue isn't going to change if you stay as you are, because the advertisers deem you are appealing to a certain market sector, and that market sector for them isn't enough for them to advertise. But if you're going to be different, if you're going to take games on the road, whatever it might be.
I mean, more. I would say less concerning than Wembley not signing out for the Challenge Cup final. Which, when did it last sign out for the Challenge Cup final? 85 or something.
Yeah, but maybe again, like Huddersfield, we need to accept that Wembley isn't going to sell out for the Challenge Cup.
Twickenham didn't sell out for an England international this week. It was less than, was it 45,000? They didn't open the top tier.
But again, you can only have so many friendlies before you actually get to the damn World Cup. Get on with it.
But they have them every year anyway, don't they? The Autumn Internationals.
Anyway.
But,
we haven't analysed the game yet.
No,
we're nearly an hour in. Mind you, most of the games...
There's nothing really to say about the TV deal, is there? Because it's what we
I just think it's
to
disappointing because we didn't offer anything more to get anything more.
What more can we offer?
Well, a foreshortened season.
Get rid of loop fixtures. That is the first thing that most fans would want.
What would you fill that with? Well, maybe an opportunity for more international style games, maybe a shorter format, whatever it might be. But the other thing is, what is the plan going forward? If we've got 12 teams in Super League at the moment, at what point are we looking at 14? Are we looking at 16? What sort of teams are we looking at? What criteria will there be? And, if we can't compare ourselves with the NRL because they've got a different product, but the way they've gone about getting a 17th team and now talking about an 18th team, and they're already saying, well, actually it won't be 18, it'll be 20, and they're already saying to their broadcasters, we've got an event in Las Vegas next year. That's when you go into your broadcast deal and say, we can offer you something different. State of Origin might have only been going since 1980, but what it is now is a huge bargaining chip. But somebody took a risk in 1980 to say, we're going to change the concept. because it's been New South Wales and Queensland for a very long time, but New South Wales win it every year now because they can pick any player that plays in New South Wales, so they've got all the best Queensland players. So we'll trial at one game of the 3 to change it. You play from where you were born and not. So this isn't going back to Yorkshire, Lancashire. It's somebody saying we need to come up with something different. Well, what are we doing to make our sport look different?
And the idea of expanding the NRL is to go to new markets.
Exactly.
Perth, an extra club in New Zealand, or PNG. So that's where you sell your extra subscriptions. That's where you generate extra revenue. Yeah. That's where it's appealing to a broadcaster. If we keep peddling clubs from the same districts, we're fishing in the same pond.
We're marginalising ourselves.
Absolutely, and that's not disrespectful to any of the existing clubs at all. It's just that we're trying to expand the game.
And the thing about Toronto,
expanding the game is about expanding revenue.
We know all the issues with Toronto, some of which were money issues, which we asked them to pay bonds that no other club was having to pay. They had an owner that put in a lot of money that clearly we decided wasn't enough, but was more than most other clubs were putting in. But what we did have was a new market of 10,000 people, which we had no idea how to capitalise on that.
And it was different, it was vibrant, it set something apart. Unfortunately, it just didn't work, did it?
But we had a template there that shows there's something there that we could do with the sport. Where, we might have to do a lot of groundwork, but there might be an idea of reinvigorating Wales with a concept like that. There might be going into Ireland because some domestic rugby league.
It just has to be done correctly, though. You can't do it off and rely on one single owner and therefore the whole thing can.
But the model works because Toronto, in a lot of respects, worked.
But I think I'd forgive my ignorance, but when Melbourne was set up, I think there was a huge amount of input there that went almost from. But it wasn't just reliant on one single owner, was it?
No.
So and because the whole.
But also, it wasn't reliant on relegation.
No.
So if Melbourne needed 3 or 4 years to get the best players to become the best team, they were allowed to do that. Catalan were allowed to do that when they came in. We could have had this year a project on what do we do with Toulouse. Does that enhance Super League to have Toulouse in there, to have 2 teams in France? Does that get us the television deal in France? Does that get us more advertisers because we're seen to be a European-wide sport? Do we have to disenfranchise a team that's in there to allow Toulouse in? Maybe not. Maybe that's part of our plan of how we're going to spread and expand the game.
But all those decisions have to be taken and they have to be led, and I don't think you can constantly consult people.
No.
Can we reincarnate Maurice Lindsay? Because that's what we need.
The other thing we need is a spokesperson, and I know we've talked about this hundreds of times, but nobody's actively out there talking up the game.
But because you put your neck on the line when you do that,
yep.
So it's high risk from an individual's perspective point of view. But actually, IMG don't have a public voice. No. Would be what I would say. If you've got such a stake in the game, then have a voice in the game, have a representative in the sport where you speak on behalf of the sport. But because it's this constant consultation with everybody, you can't design by committee.
No.
Yes, undertake a consultation, but then make decisions.
Well, bringing in IMG is the only consultation.
And they have to be unpopular ones.
Yeah, absolutely.
Sometimes. But if it's for the greater good of the game, for the long term, not necessarily the short term, then it has to be the way.
Yeah, Tony's mentioned Lee going to PNG to play a game. So, Derek's going to take over the island. All of it. Even the bits that are not PNG.
That's not agreed yet, but it would be great if they did.
The sport doesn't... When people say the sport needs more Derek Bowmans, they need Derek Bowman's money, not necessarily Derek Bowman's.
But whether you like him or not, he's charismatic.
Oh yeah.
So,
but the problem is we're still talking about him and not talking about the players which are going to sell the sport.
We are.
It's great. The Super League podcast, great. They've got a podcast, but too many times on there, it's not current players. We need to be selling these current players and their stories. They've got this platform. We talk about our league, but here's a platform we've got, and we're using it to sell Jason Robinson or whatever. Well, Jason Robinson's got a great story. Everyone knows that. But him isn't going to sell any tickets to any games anymore because he doesn't play. He's of no relevance.
Having said that, things like podcasts, you are speaking again to your own audience, so it's trying to break into new audiences by being on Strictly Come Dancing or whatever it might be. By going on to things like that in the jungle and stuff, you actually raise the sport in the front of people's eyes that would never even look at the sport.
But then you've got to have a way of capitalising on it. Because we won a wheelchair World Cup.
Yeah.
and it hasn't yet been formally announced when they're next playing an international yet. We've got some fantastic ambassadors for the sport and great stories to tell about those people. But again, there's almost a dragging of feet to capitalise on winning. There's a documentary coming out in October about the winning of the World Cup, which is based around 4 of the team predominantly. But what are we doing on the back of that to sell that wheelchair sport to get more money from a television deal, rather than just saying, television people, will you put this on? You don't have to pay for it because you've already given us a television. At what point do you say, right, if you want the women's game, it's worth that in a contract. If you want the wheelchair game, it's worth that in a contract. If you want the men's game, it's worth that. That's why you've got to pay us more, not less. But we don't know the answers to those.
We need a regular, I don't watch it often, but on Steph's Packed Lunch on Channel 4. It's filmed in Leeds, right? They have that audience of people who are on every week. They're all the same people. Why do we just say? Can we have?
I've got a friend that's in that audience.
There you go. Then. Yeah. Why can't we just now say? Why do we get see if they want a rugby league person just to sit there? Don't have to talk about rugby league. They're just there. And Papua New Guinea, very very clever, very good squid. Players themselves need to do more, but under some kind of advisement, so it doesn't end up like the 6 to 8 debate.
I think one of the things IMG have been doing is they have been working with some of the identified players who can be the face of the game, and I think they are teaching them social media etiquette and various other things. That is happening. A couple of the players went to was it the WWE the other week? A couple of players went to somewhere, was it Grand Prix? Somewhere, but players have now been. The golf, was it the Open Golf? IMG got them tickets.
George was at Wimbledon or something?
So they are managing to get them into areas where they're not normally seen, but that's a slower process.
They also need to become content creators. They need to do stuff on Instagram, which is on TikTok, on YouTube or whatever. They need to let us into what's it like being a professional rugby league player? What do you do? What do you get up to? They need to be streaming on Twitch and stuff. Or just eating Nando's all the time. Which is funny because I was watching Being the Elite, where the wrestlers have been in London, and one of the things they did was went to Nando's because they don't have in America. So here's our behind the scenes life wearing Nando's.